In the last part, we have rigged most of the model. In this part, we will add some refinement to this rig. We will add IK controllers for the hand and for the legs. Also, we will rig the eye as well. Alright, first thing we need to do is change how the bones are displayed. From this tab, and then in the viewport display, change the display as from octahedral to B-bone. What is good about this display is that I can actually now go to edit mode and then press Ctrl, Alt and then S, and I scale the bones down like that. This will actually help us in the next step when we create a controller for the arms. So to do that, select this bone, then press Shift D to duplicate it, then press Escape to snap it back to its original position. Then press Ctrl Alt S to make it bigger, like that. Now if you go to wireframe, you will see that the other bone is inside of it. Next, we need to unparent this bone, because as you can see right now, because it's duplicated from this bone, it's actually parented to the one previous to it. So what we need to do is go to this tab and then in the relations section, and then from parent, press this X to remove the parent from it. Now you can see it's not parented to anything. This is very important. All the controllers that we will create, we need to remove their parents. Alright, next step, we need to go to pose mode by pressing Ctrl Tab, then pose mode. Normally, we can control these bones in a forward kinematic system, meaning that if I selected this bone, for example, and rotated, this bone and all the bones after it will be rotated with it. If I selected this bone, it will rotate the bones after it. For this bone, I want to do the inverse of that. I want it to follow an inverse kinematic system so that this bone will control all the bones before it. So to do that, I need to select this bone, which is the first one before it, and then go to this tab, then add bone constraint, then choose inverse kinematics. Alright, you will see that it asks me to put in a target. So press that and select the armature. When we do that, a bone section will appear. In this section, we need to add this bone that we created, the controller bone. So to make things easier, go to edit mode by pressing tab, then select the bone we just created and rename this one to IK control.L. Alright, then go back to pose mode by pressing Ctrl tab, then pose mode, select this bone, then go to constraints tab, and then in the bone section, search for IK control.L. Now this bone is set up to be the controller for this bone and all the bones before it. As you can see, this yellow line going from this bone to the base bone. What that means is that the controller bone will now control this bone and the bone before it and the bone before it, and then its parent, which is the base bone. So it's going all the way to the base bone. Right now, if I selected this bone and try to move it, you will see that all the character is now moving with it, which is not something that we want. We want it to only control the bones of the arms. So to fix that, we need to change the chain length from 0, which is all the bones. You want to change it to 2. 1, 2. Now you'll see that the yellow line has changed to the end of this bone. Right now the controller will only control this bone and the one before it. Let's check that out. And that's exactly what it did. Alright, next, try to move the bone like that. We'll see that the bone inside is not respecting the rotation of the controller. So to fix that, we need to put another constraint on this bone and make it copy the movement of the controller bone. So to do that, select the bone inside, then add bone constraint and select copy rotation. Then in the target, choose armature, a bone section will appear, choose the IK controller again. Instantly, you'll see that this bone snaps to the controller bone, like that. Right now, if you moved the bone and rotated it, the bone inside will be following its movement. Perfect. When I try to move it, it will control the whole arm. But as you can see, when I rotate it like that, there is no way to actually control the elbow bone or this part of the mesh, and I can just control it with this controller. I need to find a way to predict how this bone will move. So to fix that, I actually need to create a new controller for the elbow. Okay, so to do that, press tab to go to edit mode, select this vertex, which is the part where the elbow is located, then press E to extrude another bone, then press Y to snap it on the Y axis, select this bone, then from this tab, go to the relation section, and remove the parent. Right now this bone is not parented to anything. Let's move it backwards a little, like that. Then go to pose mode, select the bone that we have added inverse kinematics to, and instead of just adding a new constraint, the inverse kinematics already have something for the elbow controller here, which is called pole target. This one, if I selected armature, you'll see a bone section appeared as well. Let's rename this bone to elbow underscore control. Control.L, go to pose mode, then here select the elbow controller that we just made. As you can see, the bones just rotated 180 degrees. This is easily fixed by changing the bow angle to 180. Alright, now if I selected this bone and try to move it like that, I can select this bone and rotate the elbow part of the mesh, and I will have more control over my arm. Let's switch to the legs and try to do the same thing as we did with the arm. Select the armature, then go to edit mode, select this bone, then press Shift D to duplicate it. Then press Ctrl Alt S to make it bigger, like that. Normally the controller bone should be in the position of the last bone in a chain, but for the leg bone, it's better to have it on this bone and not the toe bone. Okay, as we did with the arm, we need to make this bone the controller for the whole leg. So to do that, go to pose mode. First, let's go to this tab and remove the parent for this bone to make it free. Then go to pose mode, then select this bone, which is the one previous to it. And we can just go to this tab and add a bone constraint inverse kinematics, just as we did with the arm. But to make things faster, we can just select the controller bone, then press Shift and hold, select this bone, and then do the same manual process with a shortcut by pressing Ctrl Shift C. This will get you this menu, add constraints with target. Now if I selected inverse kinematics, this will automatically add an inverse kinematics on this bone and will put the bone target to the bone that we have created right here. Let's rename this one as well to IK underscore leg control.L. Try to remove it. Let's change the chain length to 2 as well, this bone and this bone. The same thing we need to do is with the inner bone. We wanted to copy the rotation of the controller bone. So select the controller, Shift and hold, select the inner bone, Ctrl Shift C, then add copy rotation. Then if you want to reset all the movement that we have done to the leg, you can just press Alt R, Alt G to move it back to its original position. Okay, for the leg, we will add more controllers to it so that we can be able to control the heel and get the toes to bend as if he's standing on his toes. This process can be a little bit hard to grasp or understand at first, but we will go through it step by step. First thing we need to do is go to edit mode, select this vertex, then press E and Z and pull it down like that. To make things easier, we need to go back to the octahedral display from this tab so we can know the direction of the bone. Then select this vertex again, press E, then Y, and pull it on the Y axis like that. Select this vertex, then press E and Y and push it like that. Extrude again by pressing E, then Y and push it one more time like that. Alright, for this bone, let's remove its parent from this tab, then rotate it by 180 degrees by pressing R, then 180, then enter. Let's adjust the roll of all these bones. As you can see, these bones are slightly rotated on their axis, so it might not work perfectly. So to reset all axis rotation of the bones, if you go to this tab, you can actually see the axis by checking the axis in the viewport display. You will see the local axis of each bone, the X and Y and Z for each bone. To reset the roll of all the bones at one time, press B for box select, select all these bones, then press Shift N to recalculate the roll and choose global positive X axis. That will change all the axes and make it similar to each other. Alright, you can just remove the axis now and display it whenever you want it. Let's change the bones back to B bone. Select the new bones that we've just created, then press Ctrl Alt S and scale them down a little. Go to the right side. Let's change some of the parenting for these bones. First thing we need to do is select the controller bone, the IK controller, then Shift and hold and select this bone. Then press Ctrl B to make parent, then select keep offset. Now the IK controller is parented to this bone. Alright, now select this bone, Shift and hold, then select this bone. Press Ctrl B and keep offset. Okay, select this bone, Shift and hold, then select this bone, then make this bone the last bone selected, then press Ctrl B, keep offset. Now these two bones are parented to this controller. Let's rename some of the bones. Select this bone, rename this one to main controller, as this will be the main controller for the whole leg. Rename this bone heel roll control.L. Then rename this bone to anything. Now, if I did everything correctly, I can control the whole leg from the main controller, as now the parenting chain leads to this bone, and I want this bone to be the controller for the heel. When I rotate it like that, I want the leg to be moving up and down, and when I rotate it in this direction, I want it to stand on his toes. Okay, so to do that, I need to add more constraints to these bones. First, I want these bones to copy the rotation of this bone. So if I selected this bone, then I press Shift and selected this bone, I can press Ctrl Shift C and add a copy rotation constraint. You will see that this happens. If you go to the Constraints tab, in the copy rotation constraint that we've just added, change the space to local space and this one local space as well, and it will return to normal. Now if I rotated this bone, you will see that this bone is now following its rotation. Let's do the same thing with this bone, as we want this bone to copy the rotation of this bone as well. So select this bone, Shift select this bone, Ctrl Shift C and copy rotation, and also change the space to local space, local space. Alright. So what I need to do next is I want to limit these bones, so I prevent them from rotating in a certain direction. So if I rotated this bone like that, I don't want this bone to be able to rotate in the negative direction like that. I want it only to be able to rotate when I rotate this bone like that, and only go upwards. And the same thing with this bone. I don't want it to go up like that. I just want it to rotate downwards. I can achieve that by adding another constraint to limit the rotation. Add a limit rotation constraint, and then for this bone, limit the rotation on the Z axis and change it to local space. Now if I rotated this bone, you will see that it's not moving anymore and it's limited, because right now we have a minimum value and maximum value of 0 degree. I just want it to move in the negative directions. When I rotate this bone in the negative direction, I want it to be following this rotation. So I put in the negative value, negative 15 degree. So right now it's moving when I move the bone in the negative direction, but when I move up like that, it's not moving and it stays in the 0 value of the maximum. I hope that makes sense. Alright, the same thing we need to do for this bone. Add a limit rotation, and then change it to local space as well, and limit this one in the Z axis, but this time put a maximum value of like 20 degrees, so it's moving only when I move in the positive direction, but when I go to the negative direction it's not moving, and it's following the parenting that we have initially made for this bone. This bone is now following this bone because it's parented to it, not because it's copying the rotation of this bone. I know it's hard to get, but if you did it a few times you will be able to understand it. What I need to do next is that when I rotate this bone like that, I want the toe bone to stay on the ground. So to do that, select this bone, Shift select the toe bone, Ctrl Shift C, and make it copy the rotation of this bone. And then from the Constraint tab, make it local space, and try it again. You will see that's now still moving with it, but if I inverted the Z rotation, you'll see that snaps to the ground and it's not moving with the rotation of this anymore. And because this bone is not moving in the other direction, the copy rotation will not be working. So you should get something like that in the end. Okay, let's move on. Let's try and copy all what we've done in the left side to the right side. So to do that, we can just select all the bones from the right side, delete them, and symmetrize all the bones from here to there, just like we did in the last part. But before we do that, we need to select all the controller bones that we have here and uncheck deform like that. What will that do is that it will prevent these bones from affecting the mesh. When I try to attach the mesh to the bones, these controller bones will not have any weight or deformation value to the mesh, and they will only control the bones. Only the bones that have this check mark will be able to affect the mesh itself. To be able to do it for multiple bones at the same time, select all the bones you want to uncheck deform for, then press Alt and hold it, then uncheck deform. You will see that all the bones have been unchecked at the same time. select all the bones from the right side, press X, delete bones. Now select all the bones from the left side, right click, symmetrize. Okay, now go back to object mode, select the clothes, the body, shoes and gloves. Then the last thing, the armature, Ctrl P with automatic weights. Let's check it. Okay, so it's working. Okay, let's try and rig the eyeball for this character. Select this part of the goggles and the front part, then press H to hide them. Select the eyeballs, the upper eyelid and the lower eyelid, maybe rotate it a little like that. Okay, now press Shift and hold, then select the armature as well, then press Shift H to isolate this selection. Next, what I need to do is put the 3D cursor in the center of the eyeball. So to do that, select the eyeball, then press Shift S, and that will get you this menu. From this menu you can control the location of the 3D cursor or the location of the selection that you have. So if you see here, you see cursor to select it. If you select that, the 3D cursor will snap to the origin point of the selection that we have. Select the armature, then press tab to go to edit mode. Now press Shift A, and that will add a new bone at the location of the 3D cursor. Go to this tab and change the display as to octahedral so I can see the direction of the bones. Press S to scale this bone, but instead of scaling it down from the median point like that, I want to scale it from the 3D cursor. So if you go here, you can change the transform pivot point from median point to 3D cursor. I can now scale it down from the 3D cursor like that and rotate it also from the 3D cursor and match it with the iris like that. Now press Shift D to duplicate this bone, press R and rotate it and match it with the upper eyelid like that. Press Shift D, rotate it for the lower eyelid as well. Okay, let's parent the eyeball mesh to these bones that we have just created. Go to pose mode by pressing Ctrl Tab, select this bone, then press Ctrl Tab again and go to object mode. Select the eyeball, press Shift and hold, then select the armature, press Ctrl P, set parent to bone, and now if you go to pose mode, I can control the eyeball with this bone. Let's select this bone and parent the upper eyelid to this bone. But instead of going back to object mode and selecting the mesh and parenting it to the armature, I can directly select the mesh while in pose mode. If I go to edit and uncheck lock object modes, I can now select the upper eyelid while in pose mode, then press Shift and hold, then select this bone, Ctrl B, set parent to bone. Select the lower eyelid, press Shift and hold, then select this bone, Ctrl B, set parent to bone as well. This is a faster method, better than just going back and forth between pose mode and object mode. Okay, now if I rotated this bone, you will see that I can control the lower eyelid and the upper bone can control the upper eyelid like that. It will be difficult to animate these bones because they are inside of the mesh. So I need to create other bones in front here to control these bones. So to do that, press tab to go to edit mode, select these 3 bones, then press Shift D, then Y, and push it to the front like that. Okay, right now, select these bones, then press Alt and hold, and then from this tab, uncheck deform, because I don't want these bones to deform the mesh in any way. Now, let's put some constraints on these bones to make these bones control them. To do that, I should go to pose mode, select this bone, then select the middle bone like that, then press Ctrl Shift C and add inverse kinematics to this bone. Then change the chain length to 1 so that this bone only will be controlled with this bone. If it's 0 and then I try to parent this bone to the head bone, for example, this bone will try to control all the bones in the armature. Right now, if I try to move this bone, I will be able to control the eyeball with this bone. Next, let's make this bone copy the rotation of this bone. So when I rotate this one, I will be able to rotate this one as well. Select this bone, press Shift and hold, then select this bone. Press Ctrl Shift C, copy rotation, then change the space to local space, local space. Right now, if I rotated this bone, you'll see that this bone is rotating with it. Let's change back the transform pivot point to median point. So it's rotating from the base of the bone like that. But right now you can see that it's rotating in all the axes, and I only wanted to rotate along the x-axis. So to do that, I need to limit the rotation by adding a limit rotation to this bone and limiting the rotation on the y and on the z. Also change this one to local space as well. Right now if I try to rotate, I will only be rotating on the x-axis. if I go to the right side and try to rotate, you'll see that this bone is rotating endlessly like that. So I need to limit it on the x-axis to around this position. Keep your eyes here. You will see that the rotation angle appears. Right here is about 75 degrees, so I want it to stop around here. So limit the x-axis and put in the maximum value 75 degrees. Right now if you try to rotate it, you will see that it stops at exactly this degree. Okay, let's do the same thing with the lower eyelid. Select this bone, shift select this bone, Ctrl Shift C, copy rotation, change it to local space, add a limit rotation to this one, limit it on the Y and on the Z. Select this bone and try to rotate it until it's in the middle here. This is about 46 or 47 degrees. Yeah, so let's limit on the x-axis and change it to local space, and in the minimum value put negative 47 degrees as it's rotating in the negative direction. You'll see that up there you will see the value is negative, so it will snap at this position. Right now I can do the animation of the blinking. Okay, go back to object mode, press Alt H to bring back everything. Select the front part of the goggles and hide them. Let's try and parent these bones to the rest of the armature, so it's rotating with the head. Go to edit mode, select this bone and this bone. Then the last bone selected is the head bone. Press Ctrl P and select keep offset. Select these bones and parent them to the head bone as well. Okay, go back to object mode, press Alt H to bring back everything. Go to pose mode and let's see if everything is moving along. Let's make a very minor adjustment here. Let's make this bone chain rotate with the head bone as well. So to do that, simply go to edit mode, select this bone and parent it to this bone. And because this bone is parented to the head bone, right now if I try to rotate, you'll see that this bone chain is rotating with it. Let's do the same thing with the other side. I think it's working perfectly. That's it for this part. In the next part, we will complete the rigging for this character to get it ready for animation. If you want to follow up the rest of the series or any of the upcoming videos, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon to get notified as soon as a new video gets uploaded. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next tutorial.